In the meantime, Brooke, would you like to introduce Diane Ravitch?
Diane Ravitch, yes. Diane, are you on the phone?
I am indeed. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. Before I introduce you, I just wanted to share with you and our listeners, you were a really major influence on me. I went to law school to study education law in part because I used to read the Urban Institute's education policy briefing book.
Right.
That you used to edit, which was very exciting for me.
Oh, well, that's a long time ago. Thank you.
It was a long time ago.
That's the wonderful thing about writing is you never know where the, it's like shooting an arrow in the air. You don't ever know where it's going to land.
That's true. So just so the rest of our listeners know who you are, Diane Ravitch is a research professor of education at New York University here in the city and an author of many books, one of which is called The Great School Wars, A History of New York City Public Schools, which I should say is a very great read. She's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C. as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So your essay in the New York City schools under Bloomberg and Klein, What Parents, Teachers, and Policymakers Need to Know, is titled Student Achievement in New York City, the NAEP, which stands for National Assessment of Educational Progress Results. Could you explain what these are and tell us a little bit about your essay?
Sure. The federal government gives a test of math and reading every other year, and that test is called NAEP because it stands for National Assessment of Educational Progress. This is a congressionally authorized test. Congress intended that it would be an audit of the states because the states are just wildly varying in terms of how challenging their tests are. Some of them are very easy, some of them are rigorous, but they're all over the place. So NAEP is a consistent monitor, and it's offered or given every other year to scientifically drawn samples of students in every state in the country and in 11 cities. New York City has participated in this testing since 2002 voluntarily, and so New York City has results starting in 2002. The only gain that New York City showed was from between 2002 and 2003, and that those tests were given before the Chancellor and the Mayor had done anything. They were still figuring out what their plan was going to be at the point that the kids took the federal test. There was a huge or a significant improvement in kids, particularly on reading in New York City in that year before the Mayor and Chancellor got started. So what we look at now is what were the results from 2003 to 2007, because now NAEP is no longer offered in the even years. As I said, it had been done in 2002 before No Child Left Behind took effect. But since No Child Left Behind, it's mandated to give tests every other year, an odd number of years. So we'll have the results of testing later this fall, probably in November, but not before the election.
Okay. In a recent New York Times op-ed, I think it was back in April, you expressed some pretty strong views about Bloomberg's version of mayoral control, and you specifically talked about the veracity of his claims of success, which you've touched a little bit on. In addition to the NAEP, could you share some of your views on some of the other sort of successes that he's claimed in the last few years?
Well, there has been quite a lot of boasting about test scores and graduation rates, and so what I pointed out in the New York Times article and also in the essay in this book, New York City Schools under Bloomberg and Klein, is that the NAEP scores didn't show any progress at all, whereas the state scores showed New York City making huge gains, really unbelievable gains. The state scores were not validated by the national tests, which were last given in 2007. And so for the first 4 years, 2003 to 07, no gains at all except in fourth grade math, but none in fourth grade reading, eighth grade reading, or eighth grade math. And there was no narrowing of the achievement gap, and Hispanic and black students, Asian students, white students, low-income students, none of them had made any gains, contrary to the claims based on the state test. What I also learned and pointed out in the New York Times article was that 75% of the New York City high school graduates who enter CUNY have to go into remedial courses in basic skills, reading, writing, and math.
Yeah.
So, here we have a school system saying that the kids are doing fabulously well. They're closing the achievement gap, except that those who choose to go on to CUNY, to community colleges, have to go into remediation. So they also claim to have ended social promotion. So clearly they did not end social promotion, and the gains are very shabby if, in fact, the kids can't read well and do math well enough to enter a community college.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think, I guess my last question for this part of our discussion is, what do you think all of this means, the implications of these, the differences between what's actually happening and Bloomberg's claims of success are for mayoral control and the scope of his authority moving forward?
Well, I think it's just very sad that the legislature didn't listen to the assembly hearings that were held in the 5 boroughs. They didn't consider that real checks and balances were needed. We need some verification of all these claims, and they handed this issue of verification over to the Independent Budget Office. Well, the Independent Budget Office may be good at verifying financial claims, but we're talking about the use of statistical data related to test scores and graduation rates. And when you look at things like graduation rates, there's so much falsification going on, things like credit recovery, where kids are fail a course and then sit in for 9 hours and get credit for the whole year, or where they do an independent project which is unmonitored and get credit for the whole year. This is a kind of social promotion to getting a diploma. So the graduation rates are being pumped up, and also by the pressure on principals and teachers to get their rates up. We see this happening, by the way, in other districts. And I'm
30
talking about,
seconds, please.
For instance, in Philadelphia, where there's a scandal at this moment about teachers being told to give kids passing scores when they haven't passed.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, and we will revisit some of this in the second half of our show.
Great.
So
Thank you.
So please stay on the air if you can,
Okay.
Diane Ravitch.
Okay.
This is Deena Kolbert.